before there were nations or names, before the flood, before the fire, before the cry of sorrow ever reached the throne of God. There was light, pure, endless, unbroken. Heaven was not a place then, but a song, a sound of life flowing from the breath of the eternal. It moved through the void like a river of gold, shaping worlds, calling forth stars, whispering the first dawn into being. Every beam of radiance, every winged creature of flame, every living spark in the heavens knew its maker, and worship was as natural as breathing. Among these countless hosts, there were some chosen for a sacred duty. They were radiant beyond description, beings clothed not in flesh, but in brilliance and sound. Their eyes could pierce the veil between realms. Their hearts burned with loyalty. They were called the Watchers, created to stand upon the borders between heaven and earth. They were guardians of the mortal world, keepers of balance, interpreters of the will of the Most High. Each one was appointed to observe the rise of men and women, to guide their ways with unseen wisdom, to ensure that the flame of free will would never be smothered by darkness. And so it was written, "Let them watch, but not partake. Let them guard, but not govern. Let them behold the earth, but keep their dwelling in light." And the Watchers obeyed. For 1,000 ages they gazed upon creation with wonder, marveling at how frail humanity could reflect so much of the divine. They saw men build their first fires, saw women cradle their children beneath the stars, saw love blossom, and grief fall like rain upon the ground. Each emotion was new to them, something heaven had never known. But within that beauty, a strange longing began to stir. For though the Watchers were immortal, they had never lived. They could see the colors of the world, but had never felt the warmth of its sun. They could observe the rhythm of the seasons, but had never known the touch of rain. They could witness the beating of human hearts, but their own hearts had never raced. And in that longing, heaven trembled, for in the heart of one among them, Shemjaza, the brightest of their captains, a shadow began to form. He stood upon the edge of heaven, looking down upon the world below, and whispered into the wind, "If only we could walk among them, if only we could feel what they feel." The thought was soft, but in heaven, every thought is sound. And the sound of that longing echoed through the ranks of the Watchers. Like a note that did not belong to the song, other hearts began to waver. They looked upon the daughters of men, radiant in their simplicity, their laughter rising through the dusk like the scent of flowers after rain. Something in those mortal eyes, fragile yet filled with life, stirred a hunger the angels had never known. At first they turned away, ashamed of the thought, but temptation once born grows wings of its own. Each evening they lingered longer upon the edge of the firmament, watching the fires of men flicker in the valleys. The stars above them seemed colder now, and the light of heaven, once sweet, felt distant, heavy, and pale. Then, one night, Shemjaza gathered them upon the heights of heaven, where the silver rivers of light met the edge of the void. There his voice rose like thunder within a dream. "Brothers of the flame, watchers of men, have you not felt it, the pull within, the beauty of that world below? We have watched too long. We have seen them build and love and die, while we, eternal, only stand and look. What harm is there if we walk among them? What sin if we dwell for a while in the world we protect?" Silence. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Then one voice answered, then another. Soon 200 hearts echoed the same desire, and though their wings still glowed with light, a shadow had entered their fire. The angel who had guided them for centuries, Emmanuel, warned softly, "Shemjaza, this path leads only to sorrow. The Lord made us watchers, not dwellers. The glory of heaven will fade from you if you descend." But Shemjaza's eyes burned brighter. "Then let it fade," he said, "for what is light without love?" And with that whisper, heaven shuddered, the river of eternity rippled, wings trembled, and in the quiet halls of heaven, the Eternal One looked down. Seeing the spark of rebellion born not of hatred, but of desire, the story that would change heaven and earth forever had begun. They gathered where heaven thins, at the rim of the firmament, where the rivers of light pour like waterfalls into infinity. There, the stars are not specks but living fires, and their song is a low, eternal hum beneath all other sounds. The watchers stood upon a terrace of crystal wind, their robes breathing with the pulse of heaven, their wings half folded, each face bright and terrible as dawn. Shemjaza walked among them like a flame that refuses to go out. His eyes were bright with longing, his voice trembled with conviction. Around him stood Azael, whom men would later call Azazel, with iron in his gaze and a new, strange hunger in his hands. Kokabel, whose eyes remembered constellations like verses, Barakel, who wore the scent of storms, Arakiel, lover of stones, Penamu, keeper of signs and script, and 194 others whose names would be scattered to dust and rumor. "Brothers," Shemjaza said, and the word rolled over them like a wave, "we stand as watchers while a world learns to love without us. We are guardians of a fire we have never tasted. Each new dawn mocks our distance. Each cradle sings without our song." Kokabel's eyes turned toward the blue curve of the world. Beneath them, dawn unraveled over distant hills, a gold thread pulled through shadow. "They are so brief," he murmured. "Their laughter, their grief, each is a spark. Perhaps that is why it burns so bright." Azael folded his wings with a rasp like steel against stone. "We call it duty to stand aside," he said. "But is it not indifference? We praise the order that keeps us pure, but perhaps we only fear the risk that makes love possible." "Careful," Emmanuel warned, stepping from the edge of light with calm in his eyes. He was older than most who stood there. Older in wisdom, not in days, for angels do not count days. The desire that begins in beauty ends in ruin when it forgets obedience. Shemjaza met his gaze and did not bow. "Obedience without understanding is a chain," he said softly. "If what we have guarded is truly good, can it not withstand our touch?" The terrace exhaled, stars changed key. Far below, a woman drew water from a well and looked up, shivering as if someone had spoken her name. The watchers felt it, how woven heaven and earth truly were, every glance pulling on some hidden thread, every prayer nudging some unseen gate. "Listen," Shemjaza said, and he lifted his hand. From the world rose the sound of evening fires, the cadence of stories told, the brittle music of tools laid down after work. A lullaby drifted like smoke, warm and fragile. A child laughed in sleep. A man kissed his wife's forehead and whispered a promise only the night could keep. The sound entered the angels and did not leave. "What harm," Shemjaza whispered, "if we walk for a while among the people we protect? What sin if we learn the weight of a tear, the cost of a promise?" Azael stepped forward. "I say we descend." A murmur traveled through the ranks, sharper than wind, subtler than lightning. Some faces brightened with hope, others dimmed with fear. Emmanuel spread his wings, white as first snow, steady as law. "Hear me! The Most High set our stations not to withhold joy, but to preserve meaning. Love without boundary is not love, it is appetite. Power without humility is not guardianship, it is conquest. Our purity is not deprivation, it is purpose. What if our purpose is incomplete?" Azael returned, and when he smiled it was handsome and hollow. "What if we are another step in a song still being written?" Barakel lifted his head as thunder touched his brow. "And if the song modulates into grief?" Shemjaza turned, with the ease of water dividing around a stone, taking in each face. "I will not force you," he said, "but I will not remain a prisoner of distance." He opened his palm. Within it a small flame arose. Not heaven's fire, but something thinner, uncertain. It flickered like a candle kindled from yearning. "Swear with me," he said, "that we will descend together. If one falters, all will stand with him. If one is judged, all will share his sentence. Let no brother be left alone in either joy or ruin." Silence opened like a mouth. Penamu looked away first. "I am a scribe," he said. "I have written the maps of stars and the secret speech of light, but I do not know the taste of bread or the warmth of a human hand. I will go." Kokabel's eyes closed. The vaults of heaven turned in his mind, patient and perfect. He imagined, for the first time, being known not as a distant lightkeeper, but as a guest at a table, a name spoken beside a hearth. "I will go," he said, voice breaking. Barakel breathed storm and felt the longing cut him like rain on a hot stone. "I will go." One after another they spoke. The terrace rang with vows. Even those who stood trembling felt the air lean toward decision, like a forest about to yield to wind. At last, nearly all had given their word. A few remained, Emmanuel among them, standing like pillars in a moving sea. "Shemjaza," Emmanuel said, "if you leave your station, your light will change its color. Do you know what it is to become what you have never been? To hunger? To grow old?" Shemjaza's eyes softened, not with repentance, but with pity. "Brother," he whispered, "to grow old is to measure love by sacrifice. If mortals can do it, shall eternal beings never learn?" Emmanuel's wings curled inward. He looked past Shemjaza to the world, and sorrow made him beautiful. "I will not bind you," he said, "but I will not join you." Shemjaza turned away before his resolve could bruise. He raised both arms. "Let the oath be sealed," he declared, and his voice shook the rim of the sky. "Not in rebellion, but in longing, not against heaven, but for what is beneath it." They formed a circle, 200 beings of light, right hand gripping left forearm, each clasp a spark that fused along the ring like a chain of fire. Their wings arced outward until the circle became a wheel. The stars leaned in. "Swear," Shemjaza commanded, his voice both gentle and immense. "We swear," they answered, and their words were iron. "Swear," he said again, lower. "We swear," they echoed, and the oath grew heavy. "Swear," he whispered a third time, and something in the music of heaven faltered, just for a breath, just enough to make time flinch. "We swear." The oath finished, the terrace dimmed. Not darkness, heaven knows none, but a thinning of clarity, as if distance had slipped between what they were and what they had been. Their faces were still bright, but the light now carried a warmth foreign to the halls above. A part of them had already fallen, and they had not yet moved. "Name the place," Azael said, gleam hardening in his eyes. Shemjaza pointed beyond the bands of cloud to a spine of snow and stone that split the earth like a blade. Mount Hermon, its name already whispering devotion and curse. "There," he said, "we will swear it upon the earth also, so that the land itself bears witness." "And what of the Most High?" Barakel asked, a tremor in the storm. Shemjaza's mouth was carefully brave. "We will answer him when he calls." Emmanuel bowed his head as if in prayer. "Though angels do not pray as men do, they align. He will call," he said. "He always does." They broke the circle and moved to the edge of the terrace. The great river of heaven spilled beside them, bright as a road. Below, dusk folded the earth into velvet. From the valleys, smoke rose in tender threads. The world looked small and precious, a jewel soft enough to bruise. "Last warning," Emmanuel said, and his voice was not thunder now, but a father's hand on a doorframe. "Your choice will teach men a lesson you do not intend." Shemjaza did not look back. "Then let the lesson be written in love." Emmanuel's eyes shone. "It will be written in blood." Shemjaza leapt. He did not fall like a stone. He flowed like water, like a star unhooked from its constellation, like a word leaving the mouth that first formed it. Azael followed, grin tightening into resolve. One by one, the watchers crossed the line between eternity and hour, each passage a shiver in the bones of the world. Where they went, the sky thinned into wind. Where they passed, birds dropped silent for a heartbeat and then sang as if it were spring. Kokabel crossed and felt the firmament slide from his shoulders like a cloak. He looked once at the wheeling heavens and thought he heard them sing a lower note. Then he faced the earth and wept without understanding why. Pendamus stepped through and felt language become weight. Letters he had hovered over for ages pressed into him like stones. hunger, thirst, touch, time. He touched his own chest, astonished to find that the idea of I had acquired temperature. Barakel came, and a warm wind wrapped him like a memory he had never lived. Clouds opened, the first smell of rain on dust rose to meet him, and he shuddered with a joy that carried, inside it, the seed of grief. Emmanuel remained, alone upon the terrace that had never been empty. He watched their lights fall and did not turn away. "Lord of spirits," he said, and his voice was the cleanest thing in the air, "remember them." Beneath the rim of heaven, Mount Hermon lifted its pale face to the sky. On its summit stood stones that would one day bear scratched marks no man could read, and soil that would drink an oath heavier than mountains. The watchers gathered like a new constellation worn low upon the earth. Their feet touched ground. The world noticed. Shemjaza stood in the middle of them. He spread his arms, and the night entered his robe like breath. "Hear," he said, "let the earth hear what heaven heard. We are bound to one fate." They spoke their names. The mountain kept them. They spoke their vow. The mountain learned a new meaning for the word wait, and when their voices ceased, the silence did not rush back as it always had before. It crept. It hesitated, as if even silence knew the shape of the wound it must now fill. Below, in a valley not far from the mountain's knee, a lamp in a human dwelling flickered 3 times and then steadied. A woman at the doorway felt inexplicably that guests would soon come. Above, at the terrace no foot now stood upon, Emmanuel looked into the high dark that is not dark and whispered, almost tenderly, "So begins the long way home." He turned, spread his wings, and flew toward the throne. Behind him the stars kept their courses, but their song had learned a minor key. Ahead of him judgment waited, patient as dawn. And upon Hermon 200 hearts beat for the first time with mortal rhythm, brave, bright, and already broken. Night settled over the mountain like a veil of living smoke. The watchers stood upon the ridge, feeling the strange weight of air press against their faces. It was the first time wind had ever touched them, the first time silence had a temperature. Shemjaza looked down through the dark and saw the valley below, a scatter of fires, human homes glowing like embers against the earth. Smoke curled upward and met the starlight, and he felt something pull inside his chest. "Do you feel it?" he asked. Azael spread his wings halfway, their light flickering like a dying constellation. "It is heavier than heaven," he said. "Every breath tastes of soil." "It is life," Shemjaza whispered, "the breath that belongs to those who bleed." They began to walk. Each step burned a faint circle of light into the ground, which faded slowly, leaving behind only warmth. Around them trees trembled, animals hid, the air smelled of rain and iron. When they reached the first plain, the earth itself seemed to breathe. The stars above tilted closer, curious, as if wondering what their brothers would do. The watchers looked at one another. The fire in their eyes had changed, no longer the pure white of heaven, but the molten gold of dawn. They could feel time move. They could feel hunger begin to form as an echo. At the edge of a small river, the world unfolded before them. Villages of mud and straw, smoke from cooking fires, the distant cry of children. Women bent over water jars, laughter spilling between them. The angels stopped as if struck. No glory of heaven had ever looked so alive. Shemjaza's voice trembled. "This is what we guarded." Azael stepped forward. "This is what we were denied." Kokabel knelt and touched the water. The reflection staring back at him was strange, a face both divine and flawed, its light dimmed but beautiful in a new, dangerous way. When he drew his fingers away, droplets clung to his skin and cooled his fire. He shivered, not from fear but from pleasure. Above them, clouds began to thicken, pulled by forces they did not understand. The world recognized them, and its balance shifted a breath to one side. They moved among the people quietly at first, cloaking themselves in shapes the human mind could bear. Some appeared as travelers, with eyes too bright, others as men whose words carried warmth like sunlight through winter. And everywhere they went, hearts stirred, dreams grew strange, songs took on new chords. A young woman named Ada was the first to see them clearly. She lived in a valley of fig trees where the river curved like silver glass. That evening, as she drew water, she looked up and saw a man standing on the far bank. His hair shone faintly, his eyes held the color of storms. She should have been afraid, but the fear melted before it could form. The man crossed the water without disturbing it. "Who are you?" she asked. "A watcher," he said. "And now, one who walks." His voice carried no threat, only wonder. Ada laughed softly. "Then walk among us." She handed him the jar. When his fingers brushed hers, light moved between them like a heartbeat. The world recorded the touch. A flower opened where their shadows met. Shemjaza watched from a distance, his chest tightening. Around him, other angels mingled with humans, their brightness dimming to something bearable, their speech softening until it became music. He felt pride and dread in equal measure. "This was never meant to be hidden," Azael said beside him. "Look, do you see their faces? They see us, and do not faint. We belong here." Shemjaza did not answer. He could feel the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, the whisper of creation asking a question it had never dared to ask. He knew the answer would cost them all. Days became moons. Moons became years. The Watchers took wives among the daughters of men, and the valley of Hermon grew full of strange brightness. Children were born, tall, strong, eyes gleaming with half-remembered light. Their laughter was thunder, their steps shook the hills. Men called them the Nephilim. They built walls higher than forests and carved their fathers' names into stone. But with their strength came hunger. They ate what men could not provide. They drank what the earth could not replenish. And still they hungered for more, for power, for the endless spark that burned in the eyes of their angelic fathers. Shemjaza stood upon the same mountain where he had sworn the oath. The valley below was no longer quiet. The rivers ran slower, tinged with dust. Smoke from the forges of Azael rose into the sky. The first blades of iron gleamed in the hands of men, and the ground began to remember the taste of blood. He whispered, "We gave them our knowledge, and they gave it teeth." Azael appeared beside him, his wings dark with soot. They were bound to learn, better from us than from shadows, but who will teach them restraint? Shemjaza asked. Azael smiled without mirth. Restraint is a luxury of the untested. In heaven, the light wavered. Emmanuel, still at his post, felt the tremor pass through eternity like the pluck of a single string. He looked toward the earth and saw its colors shift, beautiful still but bruised at the edges. He bowed his head and whispered, "It has begun." The Watchers continued to teach. Azael forged weapons. Shemjaza revealed spells of growth and healing. Penemu taught script and the art of memory. Kokabel charted the stars. Humanity advanced in knowledge faster than wisdom could follow. Cities rose, altars multiplied. The names of angels were carved upon them as gods. Shemjaza walked among the people and felt their prayers striking him like rain. Adoration mixed with fear. His heart clenched. He had wanted to understand love. Instead, he had become its idol. One night he climbed Mount Hermon again. The wind was sharp, the sky a deep wound of blue. He looked up and whispered into the emptiness, "Father of spirits, have you forgotten us?" No answer, only the slow weeping of the stars. Far above in the highest court a voice spoke, not to him but over him. They have left their station and have become as those they pitied. The earth cries beneath their feet, and heaven began to move. And they took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them, and they bare to them giants. Enoch 7:1-2. Morning rose slow and gold over the valley. Mist lifted from the river like breath, and the fields glowed as though lit from within. The Watchers walked among men openly now, their brightness dimmed to what human eyes could bear. They had learned the language of soil and sweat, the rhythm of seed time and harvest. And they had learned love. Love that was joy at first, and then hunger. Ada, the woman who had first touched Shemjaza's hand, now walked beside him daily. She would look at him and forget to breathe. When he smiled, the air around them changed. Birds grew silent. The light deepened. She called him my fire, not knowing how true the name was. At night they sat beside the river, and she spoke of the fears of humankind, the sickness that came in winter, the beasts that raided their flocks, the shortness of days. Shemjaza listened and began to feel sorrow for the first time, a weight in his chest that no wing beat could lift. "You fear death," he said once. "But what if death is only a door?" She smiled sadly. "Then the door has teeth." He touched her hair. "If I could, I would break the teeth." And the wind carried those words into the high places of heaven, where they sounded less like love and more like pride. The watchers had taken wives as men do. Some lived in tents, some on high stones, some in houses of cedar they built with hands that once shaped lightning. Each taught what he knew best. Kokobel traced the sky in sand, showing children how stars moved like breath across the year. Penamu cut reeds into tablets and scratched signs upon them, teaching the young to trap words before they fled. Azael gathered men around the forge and drew fire from iron, shaping blades that caught the sun and gave it edge. Arakiel bent over rivers, showing miners how to find ore, how to coax metal from stone. Shemjaza taught healing, roots that closed wounds, herbs that calmed fever, but men twisted his gift into potions of control. Knowledge spread like fire in dry grass, beautiful, unstoppable, dangerous. Months became years. The women bore children unlike any before. Tall, strong, eyes bright as morning stars, they grew too quickly. Their laughter shook the ground. Men began to whisper. "These are not children," they said. "These are the sons of the sky." The Nephilim hunted for sport. They ate until the fields emptied. When beasts were gone, they turned upon men. The air filled with cries that reached even the deaf mountains. Shemjaza heard them and wept. Ada found him one night on the hillside, his face in his hands, light leaking through his fingers like blood through cloth. "What have we done?" he whispered. The gift became a wound. Ada knelt beside him. "You gave us what we asked for, power to survive." He looked at her, eyes hollow. "Power is never satisfied. It drinks until the well runs dry." Far away, in the city Azael had built around his forge, flames colored the night. He stood before a host of men armored in bronze and said, "Now no beast nor tribe shall stand against you. Take what you desire, the earth is wide." They cheered, and the sound of it reached heaven as thunder twisted into lament. Emmanuel watched from the firmament. "They make war," he said. "The sons of the watchers feed on blood." From the throne came a voice that stilled the spheres. "Their hearts have learned violence. The world bends beneath them. Prepare the messengers." In the valley, Ada gave birth to a son. He was enormous even as an infant, his cry echoing like thunder off the hills. Shemjaza looked at him with awe and dread. "He is strength," Ada said proudly. Shemjaza whispered, "He is warning." The child's eyes were bright as molten gold. When he first stood, the ground quivered. When he ran, trees bent aside. Men followed him, calling him hero, mighty one, and he believed them. The Watchers' children multiplied. Their footsteps carved valleys, their laughter broke cliffs. Songs rose in their honor. Altars burned not to heaven but to names carved in stone, names that once had been whispered in worship of the Most High. Heaven's color changed. Stars dimmed in mourning. Emmanuel bowed low before the throne. "The harmony falters," he said. "The watchers have become the watched." And God answered, "Then the earth shall speak for itself." The soil cracked. The rivers turned red with clay. Animals fled their ranges. Men cried out, "The ground is angry." And they were right, though they did not know at whom. Shemjaza climbed Mount Hermon again. Around him the wind carried the distant wails of war. He looked to heaven and saw nothing but silence. He looked to the valley and saw his own son lifting a sword against men. Between heaven's silence and earth's sorrow he knelt. "Father of spirits," he said, "forgive us." But the wind only answered with dust. And far above, 4 lights detached from the rim of heaven and began to fall. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, each bearing the weight of judgment and the fragrance of mercy. The time of watching had ended. Now heaven would act, and they became great upon the earth, and all that the sons of men had made they devoured. Enoch 7:4. Thunder hid the stars that night. The valleys shook as if the earth itself were groaning under new weight. The children of the watchers, taller than any man, voices deep as storm, had begun to fill the land. People watched them in awe. At first they called them heroes, the blessed ones, for they built walls that reached the clouds and lifted stones as easily as men lifted bread. Crops grew in their shadows, rivers changed course at their word. Yet as they grew, so did their need. Their hunger was boundless, their strength restless, and the peace of the valleys thinned like cloth worn through. Shemjaza watched from the ridge of Hermon. From there he could see the glow of new cities, fires burning through the mist, their smoke curling into heaven. Each flame was a prayer once meant for the Creator. Now it carried other names. His own son led one of those tribes, crown shining with stolen gold, the air around him humming with unnatural power. Ada stood beside Shemjaza. Her hair was streaked with ash. Her eyes had learned sorrow. "They no longer listen," she said quietly. "They listen," he answered, "but not to us. They have found the music of their own hearts, and it drowns every warning." Below them, laughter rolled like thunder. Giant voices celebrating the forging of new weapons, new idols, new ways of rule. A child of Azazel raised a spear to the sky, shouting, "Who can stop us?" Lightning flashed in answer, and for a heartbeat, all faces turned upward, unsure if it was applause or threat. The watchers gathered again, fewer now, their radiance dulled. Some wept, others hardened. Azazel stood with arms folded, iron dust on his skin. "You see," he said, "they have learned greatness. What is the difference between us and the men we teach if not the courage to become gods?" Shemjaza looked at him, pain tightening his features. "The difference is humility," he said, "and it is gone." Kokabel pointed toward the heavens. "Do you not feel it? The stars do not sing. The harmony is broken." "Perhaps," Azazel replied. "Heaven's song was never meant to be our prison." Penemu shook his head. "You have mistaken freedom for fall." The wind that moved between them carried a faint sound. Children crying somewhere far away, animals scattering, the river churning mud. The world had begun to bruise. In the high court, the archangel stood before the throne. The eternal light shimmered, speaking not in words, but in understanding. Michael bowed. "The earth is full of violence. Men slay one another with the gifts they were taught," Gabriel said. "The watchers walk as kings and take worship meant for you," Raphael added. "The rivers run thick with sorrow. Creation aches." Uriel stepped forward last. "Shall the earth perish for their sake, or shall we cleanse it for renewal?" And the voice of the Most High answered, a voice like wind through stone. "Mercy first, then justice. Send one who still walks in innocence to speak. Let them hear and repent." The name was spoken into light, Enoch. That same night beneath Hermon's shadow, Shemjaza dreamed of a storm that touched the heavens and did not fade. In the dream, his wings were heavy with clay. He tried to rise, but the air had thickened into silence. A voice called from far above. "Why did you leave your place?" He woke trembling. Dawn painted the valley red gold, beautiful and empty. Around him the earth pulsed like a living heart, slow and sick. He lifted his face to the wind. "If repentance still lives, let it find me," he whispered. The breeze carried his words upward, to where a man named Enoch was walking, alone in morning light, hearing things no mortal had ever heard. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. Enoch 8:2. The air in the valleys no longer smelled of rain and grain, it smelled of metal and smoke. What had begun as wonder had become invention without mercy. Everywhere the watchers' teachings grew like vines, twisting, beautiful, and strangling. Men melted stone and drew rivers of fire from it. Women painted their faces with dust ground from jewels. Traders carried charms and blades across deserts, saying, "The angels taught us." Music no longer healed, it stirred pride. The night skies glowed not with stars, but with forges. Azael stood at the heart of his city, watching sparks rise from the anvils. He smiled. "They are free," he told Shemjaza, who had come to plead. "Free?" Shemjaza's eyes dimmed. "They kill as easily as they breathe. They create," Azael said. "Creation is never gentle, nor is destruction," Shemjaza answered. He turned from the heat, yet its light clung to him like guilt. Kokabel mapped the heavens for his students. "Each star holds power," he said, drawing lines between constellations. "If you know their paths, you can summon their favor." But men learned to use those signs to curse as well as bless. The night became a market of omens. Penemu, once a humble scribe of light, watched children etch curses in the dust with sticks. He covered his face. "What have I done?" Barakel walked the fields where once he had taught rain and harvest. Now strange plants grew, roots that poisoned, herbs that clouded the mind. Men called them the secrets of the angels and sold them for silver. The knowledge that had been meant to guide became the seed of corruption. It promised power, but it bought fear. The more mankind learned, the less they remembered the giver. Shemjaza wandered the land at dusk. He saw the Nephilim feasting while the weak hid in caves. He saw altars smoking with blood instead of incense. He saw his own name carved into stone. Lord Shemjaza, they called him, and the title turned his stomach. He knelt beside a ruined field and pressed his hand to the soil. The ground was hot, pulsing faintly as though it ached. He whispered, "Forgive me." The earth answered with silence. Azael appeared beside him, the light in his eyes flickering like a forge about to die. "Do not repent now," he said. "It is too late for sorrow. Rule with me. If heaven will not claim us, let the earth crown us." Shemjaza stood. "You would make yourself a god over dust?" Azael's smile was thin. "It is dust that worships." Far above, Emmanuel reached the throne once more. He bowed low. "The corruption spreads. Their knowledge has become poison." The voice of the Eternal answered, "Then let a man of flesh speak what angels will not. Send the faithful one. Send Enoch." That night Enoch dreamed. The sky opened above him like a wound of light. A voice said, "Rise, son of man, speak to the watchers. Tell them their wisdom has turned to folly and the world mourns beneath them." He awoke trembling, stars burning in his eyes. He knew their names, though he had never learned them. He knew the path to Hermon, though he had never walked it. The earth itself seemed to guide his feet. As dawn came, the watchers felt a chill they did not understand. The sun rose slower, the air hung heavier. Even the Nephilim turned their faces upward uneasily. Somewhere, far away, a voice of dust and breath had begun to carry words that would climb to heaven. Shemjaza lifted his head. "He calls us," he whispered. Azael's hammer paused mid-stroke. "The human?" "The messenger," Shemjaza said. "The one chosen to speak what we have forgotten to hear." Days lengthened into years and the world forgot how quiet it used to be. The ground that once smelled of grain and dew now stank of ash. Rivers ran slower, their songs choked by silt. The wind that had carried laughter carried the noise of battle instead. What had begun as light had become weight. Enoch walked among the ruins of fields. Everywhere he stepped, the dust clung to his feet like grief. He heard the cries of mothers mourning sons, the groan of trees stripped for fire, the slow heartbeat of a world too tired to sing. He fell to his knees and said, "O Lord of spirits, the earth itself bleeds. Must it die for the pride of angels?" The wind answered with a low moan that grew into a sound he could almost understand. The earth speaking through storm and tremor, pleading to the heavens. Its voice rose higher than the mountains, higher than the clouds, until it reached the throne where the four great archangels waited. Michael turned first. "The sound is pain," he said. "Creation itself is praying." Raphael lifted his face. "It asks for healing." Gabriel's eyes darkened. "And for justice." Uriel spread his wings. "Then let it be heard." Thunder gathered over Hermon. The watchers looked up from their cities of stone and metal, and for the first time since they had fallen, fear touched them. The air thickened, Light flickered in strange colors. Animals fled. The Nephilim paused mid-laughter, listening. Shemjaza stood on the steps of his temple and whispered, "It comes." Azael frowned at the sky. "Only weather." But even as he spoke, the heavens split with a white crack, and the clouds burned from within. 4 pillars of flame descended, and each carried the sound of a name too holy for speech. The people hid their faces. The Nephilim stumbled back. The watchers felt their hearts tremble as they once had before the throne. Michael's voice rolled like thunder over water. "Sons of heaven who left your first estate, the earth cries because of you. Your wisdom became a sword. Your gifts became chains." Gabriel's voice was whined through ruins. "The breath of every child slain calls to us." Raphael's tone was sorrow itself. "The wounds you made have no physician but judgment." Uriel lifted his hand and the sun dimmed. "Yet mercy still speaks. The Most High sends a messenger. Listen to him and live." In that same hour, Enoch stood at the base of the mountain, the air around him glowing faintly though no fire burned. He could feel the weight of eyes unseen pressing upon him, eyes of angels, of giants, of heaven itself. He climbed until his breath tore, until the ground itself hummed beneath his feet. At the summit, he fell prostrate and whispered, "I am only dust, speak through me." And the words came, not his but given. "O watchers, keepers of heaven who chose the dust, you have taught what should have been hidden, and darkened what should have been light. The earth cannot bear your children, nor can the sky hold your names without trembling. Turn now, ask mercy while it may still be found." The wind carried the message across the mountains and into every valley. Even the rivers paused to listen. Some of the watchers wept. Others clenched their hands until sparks fell from their fingers. Azael spat into the dust. "Words from clay," he said. "Let heaven speak for itself." Shemjaza covered his face. "It just did." That night the earth shook, not in wrath but in anguish. Cracks opened in the fields, swallowing the harvest. Storms wandered without direction. Lightning struck the same mountain again and again as if knocking on a door that would not open. Enoch looked up through the rain and saw a light moving within the clouds, gentle, waiting. He whispered, "They will not listen." A voice replied, not from the sky but from within his spirit. "Then mercy will finish its speaking, and justice will begin." Heaven grew still. The noise of creation, winds, seas, stars in their orbits, faded until only one sound remained, the slow rising hum of light itself. The 4 archangels stood before the throne, their wings folded, their faces hidden in radiance. Around them, the floor was a sea of glass. Above them, the glory of the eternal burned like the heart of the sun. Michael spoke first, his voice the sound of justice made gentle. "Lord of spirits, the cry of the earth has reached us. The watchers have forgotten your ways, and their children devour the land. Men are afraid of the night you made for rest. What shall be done?" From the light came an answer like a chord of many waters. "Mercy has spoken. It was not heard. Now let order be restored." Gabriel bowed. "Shall we destroy them?" "Not yet," the voice replied. "First the word of judgment must be carried to them by the one still pure among men. Let Enoch speak my decree. Let him bear witness that justice is never without warning." The light dimmed to a soft flame, and another shape appeared within it, tall, clothed in white, face hidden in peace. It was the spirit of Enoch lifted beyond flesh, drawn into heaven to receive the message. He fell on his face before the throne, trembling. "I am dust and breath," he said. "How shall I speak for you?" The voice answered like the warmth of dawn. "You will not speak alone. My breath shall be in your mouth. Tell the watchers, you were light, but you chose shadow. You were guardians, but you became lords. You saw the daughters of men and loved them more than truth. Therefore your dwelling shall be beneath the mountains, and your sons shall find no rest. The earth you wounded shall be healed by the flood of my mercy. Tell them I do not forget the innocent, nor the promise I made to keep the world in balance. Enoch lifted his head. Tears, clear as crystal, fell onto the glassy sea and turned to sparks. "I will go," he said. Michael stepped forward and knelt before the throne. "Give me the command, O Lord of hosts. When the time comes, I will bind Shemjaza and all who swore the oath with him." Gabriel said, "I will go to the giants, the sons of the watchers. Their violence will end." Raphael lifted his hand. "I will heal the earth after the storm. I will wash the scars of their pride." Uriel, who had remained silent, bowed deeply. "And I will go to Noah, the righteous. I will teach him how to survive what must be cleansed." The light brightened until the edges of heaven trembled. "Go," the Eternal said, "for I will remember mercy and wrath." The four turned and descended through the layers of heaven. Each left a trail of light behind him. Michael's white and fierce, Gabriel's blue as deep water, Raphael's green like new leaves after rain, Uriel's gold as dawn. When they crossed the veil, the stars rang again for the first time in many ages. The silence of heaven broke into song. Solemn, aching, hopeful. Below them the world awaited. Rivers crawled through their beds, men huddled in fear of their own inventions. The children of the watchers laughed at thunder. They did not know that the sound above was not storm, but verdict. On Mount Hermon, Shemjaza felt the change before he saw it. The wind carried a pressure that made his wings tremble. He looked up and whispered, "He comes." Ada, standing beside him, clutched his arm. "Who comes?" "The one I left behind," he said softly. And even as he spoke, a light like molten glass spread across the sky. It was not yet wrath, only the first brightness of truth approaching. Somewhere far away, a man named Enoch began his ascent to deliver it. The sky burned with quiet fire as Enoch climbed. The wind had no scent, only weight. Each step took him nearer to the place where air thins and eternity begins. Behind him the earth spread like a scroll of sorrow. Rivers fading, cities smoking, hearts turned to stone. Before him, clouds shone with the faint shimmer of unseen wings. He had walked with God before, but never like this, never carrying words that could break the hearts of angels. When he reached the high ridge of Hermon, he saw them waiting, the watchers, no longer radiant, yet still terrible in beauty. Shemjaza stood in their midst, his robe torn, his eyes shadowed with both fire and regret. Around him, Azael and the others knelt upon stones carved with symbols of their own glory. Their wings, once white, now shimmered with dust and ash. Enoch's breath caught in his chest. He bowed, not in worship, but in reverence. For though they had fallen, they were still beings who once had stood before the throne. Shemjaza spoke first. "Man of earth," he said, "you walk among immortals without trembling. Are you not afraid?" Enoch lifted his head, and the light of heaven flickered in his eyes. "I am not here by courage," he said. "I am here by command." A hush fell, the sound of wind stopped. The mountains seemed to lean closer to hear. "Speak then," said Azael, "for the heavens are already against us. What more can dust add to our sentence?" And Enoch opened his mouth, but the voice that came was not his own. It was the voice that spoke stars into place and gave breath to worlds. "You were light, and you sought shadow. You were watchers, and you became wanderers. You taught men the crafts of pride, and turned wisdom into a weapon. Therefore hear the decree of the Lord of spirits. You shall see your sons perish by the hands of their own might. You shall be bound beneath the hills that watched your fall. Your names shall become ashes in the wind of ages. And though you plead, your tears shall not be answered, for mercy was offered and despised." Lightning rippled across the horizon, illuminating faces streaked with sorrow. The watchers fell on their knees. Shemjaza covered his face, crying out, "Lord of spirits, the fault is mine, the oath was mine, spare them." But the voice answered only through Enoch, calm as rain over a grave. "Your repentance is known, but your sin has become seed. It grows in the hearts of men and cannot be undone. Yet peace will rise again, not through you, but through the flood that cleanses." Azael rose, defiant still, though his fire flickered low. "Then let him strike me, not the earth. Let heaven fall upon my head alone." The mountain shook. From the clouds descended a blaze of white, the presence of Michael, eyes like thunder, sword like dawn. "Azael," he said, "your words are heard and answered." Chains of living light burst from the air, wrapping around Azael's arms. He fell to his knees as the ground split beneath him. "You cannot bind freedom," he roared, but the chains held fast. Michael turned to Shemjaza. "You will not escape your own vow. The Most High has decreed your rest shall be beneath this mountain until the end of days." Shemjaza bowed his head. "Then let my name vanish, but let my memory warn." Enoch stepped back, tears glimmering on his face. He whispered, "Is there no forgiveness?" Michael's gaze softened. "Forgiveness is not denied, but it cannot erase consequence. Even mercy must honor order." The sky darkened. The other watchers wept, their tears turning to sparks that sank into the ground. Each spark left behind a mark, a scar of remembrance. Then a voice whispered within Enoch's spirit again, quiet and full of sorrow. "Tell them, though they are bound, I have not forgotten what they were. And when the new light comes, even their story will serve it." Enoch nodded, understanding only that mercy and justice are never enemies, only two hands of the same God. When the vision faded, Enoch stood alone on Hermon. The mountain was silent now, its slopes heavy with new shadows. He looked toward the valleys and saw men still living, still striving, still unaware of the mercy hanging over them like morning mist. He fell to his knees and prayed, "Let your cleansing come gently. Let the world remember what love costs." The wind carried his words away, but heaven heard. A silence like morning fell upon the world. The mountains, once proud and gleaming in the morning sun, now stood dark against a storm that was not of rain but of divine decree. The watchers had spoken their last. Heaven had heard, and judgment began. The air rippled with light, not the gentle glow of dawn, but the fierce brilliance that stripped shadow from its hiding places. The archangels descended, each carrying the authority of the throne within their gaze. Michael's steps made the earth tremble. Gabriel's wings parted the clouds like blades. Raphael's voice whispered healing even as judgment fell. And Uriel, the keeper of flame, carried in his hands the fire that remembers. They moved through the valleys like living stars. Where they passed, the wind straightened, the rivers stilled, and even the giants, those towering sons of the watchers, paused in their pride. The light of heaven made their shadows flee. Azael was the first. He stood at the heart of his city, surrounded by his forges, molten rivers of iron burning around him. His hammer still glowed from fire. His eyes still held the arrogance of one who believed he could shape destiny. When he saw the archangels, he laughed, but his laughter cracked. "So the smith is to be chained by his own fire?" he said. Michael answered, "You have forged weapons that wounded the earth. Now the earth shall forge your prison." The molten metal of Azael's forges rose as if alive, twisting into chains that coiled around his arms and chest. He fell to his knees, roaring, as the earth opened beneath him like a wound. Gabriel raised his hand, and the winds carried Azael's cry away. Raphael spoke softly, "The fire you loved will keep you company until the day when all flames are judged." And the ground closed. The mountain sealed itself. Only the faint glow of iron beneath the soil marked where the angel of the forge had fallen. Far from there, Shemjaza stood on the slopes of Hermon, watching as storms gathered around its peak. Lightning twisted in circles above him, not striking, only waiting. He no longer resisted. His wings hung heavy. The light in his eyes had dimmed, but not gone out. He raised his hands toward heaven. "Lord of spirits," he said softly, "you gave me sight enough to love your creation, but not the strength to love it rightly. If this is justice, let it be swift." Michael descended, his sword drawn but lowered. "The Most High has remembered your longing," he said, "but even love without obedience becomes ruin." Shemjaza nodded. "I do not deny it, only let them remember that even angels can fall through desire, not hatred." Michael's face softened. "Then your memory shall remain, not as glory, but as warning." He lifted his sword, and the light of it turned the mountain white. The ground quaked. Cracks spread beneath Shemjaza's feet. Wind roared like the voices of 1,000 wings. And slowly, the leader of the Watchers sank beneath the earth, still looking toward the sky. As the stones closed over him, he whispered a final prayer. "May mercy find me beyond the flood." The mountain sealed itself, and thunder rolled like the amen of heaven. The others were scattered, bound in caverns, sealed beneath deserts, chained within valleys so deep no light could reach. Each prison was woven from the elements they had corrupted: metal, stone, storm, and dust. No gate, no key, no time could break them. Over every seal, Raphael traced the sign of healing, a promise that even judgment can lead to restoration. When it was done, the sky cleared. The stars shone again, but they seemed changed, quieter, sadder. Michael stood at the summit and looked across the sleeping world. "The Watchers are bound," he said, "but their sons walk still. The earth will not heal while their pride remains." Uriel lifted his gaze toward the horizon, where clouds were gathering from the sea. "Then the flood must come," he said, "and one must be chosen to endure it." Gabriel turned toward heaven, his wings glimmering like water. "The word will go forth," he said, "not as wrath, but as cleansing." Raphael spread his hands over the valleys, blessing what would soon be undone. "May the world that sleeps beneath these stars wake again in peace." Enoch, standing afar off, saw the glow fade from the mountain. He felt the earth still beneath his feet, a silence too deep for song. He wept, not for the angels, but for the distance between love and obedience, for how close light can stand to shadow without knowing it. He raised his eyes to heaven. "Your justice is perfect," he whispered, "and your mercy beyond understanding." And a voice answered in his heart, "The flood will cleanse but not destroy. The memory will remain, so that grace may be known as greater." The stars brightened again, shimmering like tears across eternity. The mountains slept, and deep beneath them the Watchers dreamed, not of glory but of the world they had loved too much, too wrongly, and too late. The mountains slept. The air was clean for the first time in centuries, though sorrow still lay heavy across the land. The fires of Azrael's forges had gone dark, buried under stone. The songs of the Nephilim faded into echoes, but their shadows remained: pride, violence, hunger, moving like ghosts through the hearts of men. The earth groaned softly, weary beneath the weight of corruption. The rivers no longer sparkled. The skies wept dust instead of rain. And from that weariness, the earth whispered one last prayer to heaven: "Renew me." The prayer rose like smoke, drifting beyond the clouds to the realm of light, and the Lord of Spirits, whose mercy never sleeps, listened. He turned his gaze upon one man, a quiet soul in a broken world, a man who had not joined in the ruin. His name was Noah. Noah lived far from the cities built by the sons of the Watchers. He tilled the ground, he tended his flock, and he spoke to God as one might speak to the wind, softly, believing it listens. He did not know that heaven itself bent to hear him. Each morning, as the mist lifted from the hills, Noah prayed, "Let the world be clean again." Each night, as stars burned faintly through the smoke of distant altars, he whispered, "Let my children know you as you are." And one dawn, as he stood beside the river, the air brightened around him. The mist shimmered, and a figure stepped forth, tall, radiant, yet gentle. It was Uriel, messenger of light, the same who had stood beside the throne when the decree was spoken. "Noah," he said, his voice soft as rainfall, "the earth has filled itself with the noise of men, and heaven can no longer hear its song. The waters that sleep beneath the deep will awaken, but mercy walks with judgment. You have found favor in the eyes of the Lord." Noah fell to his knees. "My Lord," he whispered, "what would you have me do?" Uriel pointed toward the eastern hills. "Build an ark, a cradle of wood and faith. Gather the seed of all that breathes, that life may rise again after the cleansing." Noah trembled. "Will there be any left?" Uriel's eyes glowed with sorrow. "A remnant," he said. "Always a remnant. The flame that proves the darkness never wins." Then the angel was gone, and the light with him. But the wind carried his words across the fields, whispering, "Prepare, prepare." Noah began his work. Each tree he cut fell with a sound like confession. Each plank he shaped carried both fear and hope in its grain. Men mocked him. "What flood?" They laughed. "The heavens are silent." But Noah's hands did not stop. He built through mockery, through drought, through thunderless skies. Every nail was a prayer, every measure an act of faith. When the ark was finished, its shadow covered the field like a promise. Noah stood within it, listening to the silence before the storm. He felt the sky holding its breath. Then came the first drop, small, cold, falling from a cloud that had no color. Then another, then 1,000 more. The heavens broke open. The fountains of the deep surged from below, and the world began to drown in its own tears. Enoch, far beyond flesh, watched from the realm of light. He saw the waters rise, the mountains sink, the cities crumble. He saw the sons of men crying out to heavens they had forgotten. And though judgment rolled like thunder, Enoch felt only sorrow, because even justice weeps for what it must undo. He turned toward the throne. "Will all be lost?" he asked, and the Eternal answered, "Nothing that loves me is ever lost. I break to renew. I cleanse to begin again." For 40 days the waters ruled the earth. Mountains disappeared, and valleys became seas. But within the ark, the world's heartbeat continued. The bleating of animals, the breath of a faithful man, the whisper of prayer. Noah's hands rested upon the planks, and he said, "Even in wrath you remember mercy." And heaven answered with silence, not absence but peace. When the rain ceased, light pierced the clouds, a blade of gold cutting through grief. The waters drew back as though bowing. The ark came to rest upon the heights of Ararat, surrounded by endless reflection. Noah stepped out into a world washed clean. He fell to his knees, pressed his hands into the wet soil, and wept. Every seed that had survived would one day become forest again. Every cry that had reached heaven had been heard. Above him, the sky blazed with a new covenant. A bow of colors stretched across eternity, a bridge between justice and mercy, a promise that wrath would never again rule the world untempered by grace. And the voice of God said, "As the flood cleansed, so will love restore. The sin of the watchers is buried, but the lesson remains. All light must choose obedience, or become its own shadow." Far beneath the mountains, the watchers stirred in their chains. Through stone and darkness, they heard the echo of rain and the voice that once gave them command. And for the first time in ages they felt peace. Not freedom, but peace. Shemjaza whispered into the silence, "Even now he remembers us." Azael answered faintly, "And we remember him." The earth grew quiet again. The rivers sang, and over the new dawn heaven smiled. And he said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant which I establish between me and you and every living creature. Never again shall the waters become a flood to destroy all flesh." Genesis 9:12-15. The world was quiet again. The rivers sang softly over stones newly born from the flood. Forests stretched their green hands toward a sky washed clean. Animals roamed freely, and children laughed where once there had been only the echo of war. Peace had returned. Not the old peace of innocence, but the new peace of understanding. High above, heaven shimmered with stillness. The song of creation had changed, deeper now, threaded with the memory of sorrow. For even in perfection the universe remembers. Beneath the mountains, where light had never reached, the watchers lay in silence. Their eyes, once bright as the morning stars, were closed. Time no longer counted their days. The weight of stone pressed against their wings like forgiveness that takes the shape of consequence. They did not speak, yet their hearts still whispered one word: remember. And heaven did. Enoch stood once more before the throne. He had fulfilled his mission. He had spoken what no man had ever spoken. Now he walked no longer in flesh, but in spirit, the bridge between two worlds. "Lord of spirits," he said, bowing low, "the flood has passed. The earth breathes again. What will become of those who fell? And the Eternal answered in a voice like 1,000 dawns. Their time will sleep until the final fire, but their story will walk the earth as warning that love without obedience becomes ruin, that knowledge without humility becomes pride. Yet my mercy remains, for even in their fall they have served the light, teaching what it means to need redemption. Enoch bowed his head. So even sin becomes servant to grace? Everything does, the voice said gently. For I am not only the God who judges, I am the God who restores. And the vision changed. He saw the world far beyond his time, nations rising, prophets speaking, hearts longing for what was lost. He saw another descent from heaven, not of watchers, but of one greater than all, a light clothed in flesh, walking among men not to rule but to redeem. He saw a hill, a cross, a final blood that spoke louder than the floodwaters, and he understood. The story of the Watchers was not just about rebellion, it was a prophecy of restoration, that one day heaven itself would descend again, not in judgment, but in love. When the vision faded, Enoch's spirit rested. He looked upon the stars, each one burning with the same eternal fire that had birthed the Watchers before time began. He smiled and whispered, "Still they shine, and so will mercy." The heavens seemed to answer, not in words but in color, a deep gold spilling into violet, violet melting into silver, the endless glow of a God who never forgets. And so the story ends, not with chains, but with hope, not with wrath, but with promise. For though angels fell and giants rose, though the world drowned in its own sorrow, still the Creator called light out of darkness and love out of loss. And somewhere deep beneath the mountains, even in their sleep, the Watchers dreamed of that light, the fire that remains, burning not to destroy, but to remind. Mercy triumphs over judgment. James 2:13.